All right. We'll let everybody get on. Hopefully, we'll have a good crowd in here today. We're going to get to deal with a set of scriptures that a lot of times is not talked about. Can be misinterpreted, misrepresented, just messed up. There's about 400 gazillion different opinions about what these scriptures mean. So this is going to get interesting today. It's going to get a little fun. Hopefully, we have some really smart people on here today that can help to make sure that we've got everything right, right? Um, we're gonna we're gonna go about an hour, a little over an hour today. Hopefully, we'll have a little time for discussion at the end, and yeah, we'll just have a good time today. I see a few familiar faces already on here today, which will be kind of exciting. Scott, why didn't you guys come by our house? Where were you guys? I see y'all stopped by and ate with Zach. You didn't come by
Well,
Lubbock.
you weren't off the 15 freeway.
I mean,
I wanted
you were close to us, right?
I
You're only like
wanted to do a loop.
15 hours.
Yeah, well, I actually wanted to do a loop and go through Montana and then down into North Dakota and then come back that way and maybe go through Colorado and
Dude, that's a
but
long trip,
we couldn't
man.
fit it. I mean, we did 3,802 miles
Woo!
in 20 days.
That
19
is a
20 days, something like that.
that
There
is a
was
long trip.
there was way too many one night stops and other places where it's like we should have stayed here 2 or 3 days, but
Yeah.
it was amazing. It was a
That's
lot of
hard in
fun.
an RV.
Yeah.
Hard in an RV, especially a fifth wheel like that where you're having to unhook and do all the things.
Yeah. Half the time I didn't have to. That was nice because we were leaving in the morning. It's like, and we were level enough to where I didn't have to drop the nose or anything. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice. Nice. No, I just wanted to give you fits. I saw you eating with Zach. So yeah.
When you drive through
Yeah.
St. George, you got to see Zach.
That's right. Everybody needs to go by. Everybody on here, everybody that watches this on YouTube, got to go by and see Zach.
Yep.
We'll give you his personal address, phone number, everything. That way you guys can connect. He'll
Color
take
of
you out
his
to lunch.
truck.
I'll just go ahead and just voluntold him.
I'm sure he'll
Isn't that how
appreciate
that
that.
works in church? That's how it works, right? I get voluntold to do all kinds of things. Oh yeah, man. Today we're going to dig into what's called a couple of different things. We're going to dig into the parable of the shrewd manager is one way it's referred to. Um, it's there's other ways that it's referred to, so this will be interesting today. I think we can get to at least a consensus of what the overall message is of the verses, so that we can really talk about some money beliefs that we have. Because here's the kind of the thing one of the main things I've learned in the last, I don't even know, I guess I've been teaching now. I don't even everything's all running together. It's been probably about 7 8 years now that I've been training students. And so initially I was just training kind of the high end stuff, the real kind of the advanced techniques. And so I was dealing with students with that. The last 4 years, I've been teaching students inside of digital storefronts, everything from the basics up. And then we also now have mindset mastery training and other things that I'm doing outside of that. And the one theme that I see across much of this, and the one theme that is fairly consistent, is we have these money beliefs that we get from all kinds of different places. Some of it from church, some of it from our family, some of it from school, some of it from maybe a job, maybe our boss or a mentor or a coach. Some of those money beliefs may come from siblings that maybe were a big part of our lives, or aunts or uncles or whatever it may be. But we all have these money beliefs, and these money beliefs guide our actions. These money beliefs guide the things that we do. And it's very interesting as we really take a hard look at some of these beliefs. Like today, we're going to get probably into a uh, few tender topics that that you might push back against. So be aware of that. Like, even some of you know, I've been writing a book about money and God and all that for about a year now. We've been going back and forth trying to figure out, how do we want to do this and what does it need to look like? We're like right there. We're like at the last 10% of getting this book done and being able to publish it. And part of the reason why it's taken a while is we wanted to make sure that we felt confident in our scriptural basis for the book, that we wanted to make sure that we were living the way we're telling people that, hey, this is what scripture says, because that does no good, right? If I come out and go, well, this is what it says to do, but I don't live that way. We wanted to make sure that that the thoughts, beliefs, those things that we struggle with, that we were honest with them. Because really what I'm kind of learning is as we have kind of gone through, looked at all these different scriptures, looked at money beliefs, looked at limiting beliefs, looked at how things work with business, looked at giving, and looked at like what really is rich and what really is poor. Because honestly, I could ask there's 27 of us on right now. I could ask all 27 of us what's rich and what's poor, and we'd get different answers. Because what's poor to somebody might not be poor to somebody else. And what's rich to somebody might not be rich to somebody else, because it's different. Like I see the McClellans are on here right now. They're down in Mexico. That's a whole different world. So you like where you're at, what you're around, what's considered normal, right? All affects what we feel like, well, this is just normal. This isn't rich. This isn't poor. And yet my guess would be that probably everyone that's on this call today is rich compared to the rest of the world. The fact that you could get on a Zoom call on the middle of an afternoon on a Friday says something. So just that says something about us. And so compared to the rest of the world, we truly are a very, very lucky, very wealthy nation. If you're in the U.S. or in any of the other countries, like we have students all around the world, and most of them are in countries that have had a lot of advantages and a lot of opportunity and a lot of just ways that they could create things. Now, the cool part about it is the internet has become the ultimate equalizer, because it's given the ability for somebody that lives really anywhere in the world. We have people that do missions work in places that they only have the internet. They do no business in the country that they're actually in. They do all of their business in like the US or Australia or Canada or somewhere else, the UK, and they create their income from that, but they're traveling all over the place doing missions work. And so the internet becomes the ultimate equalizer with that, which is kind of cool. But again, if our money beliefs are skewed, then we will self-sabotage. If I am trying to work towards a bigger income, whatever wealthy means to you, when we started our businesses, wealthy to me was just, let me pay my bills. Let me have a house and a car that's paid off. Like we were broke, and we started from scratch and built it up from there. And we built a multi-million-dollar net income in the last 9 years. What's crazy about that is as we've gone through that process, I've had to push up against a lot of my belief systems. I've had to push against, well, is this okay? Is this all right in God's eyes? Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing with my money? Am I being a good steward? You know, all these things that we are told, we talk about. What's interesting is Jesus talked about money all the time. Like, it's the most talked about topic that he had. And yet, how many times do we really talk about this in a church setting or in a biblical setting? Or if we do talk about it, it's almost always has to do with tithing or giving or that portion of it. It doesn't really talk about really what should we view money as. And so by no means are we going to get into all of that today, but we will start to at least hopefully start to see some of where Jesus wanted to lead us in the discussion with not only money, but our resources, our time, our assets, our material possessions, like all of those things that we have. And if you guys are in a business, your business, because guess what? that business doesn't belong to you. Like, it was a gift from God. Everything that we have is a gift from God. And so when we start to view it that way, and we start to view all of these things as, hey, this is a blessing from God, whether it's the business, whether it's the money, whether it's a house, whether it's a car, whether it's the fact that you have a computer or a cell phone or something to be on today, to be able to even be on this call. Those are all gifts from God, right? And when we recognize that we are, I'll give you a good illustration. If you went to a financial planner and you gave them, let's say, $100,000, and you said, hey, I want you to go and I want you to invest this and take care of this and build my resources and my assets and make it grow and all those beautiful things. Is that financial planner ever going to consider that his? No, that's yours. Is that financial planner going to go brag about the $100,000 that he has? No, it's not his. Is that financial planner going to make sure that he takes really good care of that? Because that's like his job. That's what he does. That's his whole thing. Like, if he can't build trust, if he can't take care of that for you, if he can't grow it and do his job for you, then you're going to remove those assets, that money, and go with somebody else, right? He just takes care of it. Those aren't his things. It's not his money. When we start to look at ourselves as truly being stewards of what is God's, not ours, it really flips everything on its head. And so we're going to push into some of this today, and we're going to see where it goes. And like I said, I hope we can have some conversation at the end. I hope we have enough time to have that, because I think this is one of those topics that we could literally have Kingdom Impact calls on every week, and probably do it every week of the year, and still get to the end of the year with many more topics to be able to cover, because money's a necessity. It just is. And it doesn't matter whether it's money in the way we know it today, or if it was rice that was used back in the olden ages, or sticks. I don't know if y'all have ever thought about that, but it wasn't like when they had a chicken and some eggs, and this dude had a goat and some milk, and this guy had a cow and some beef or whatever. It wasn't like they could pick that thing up and go say, hey, I want to trade this for this. I mean, that was the whole point of having money, right? There was value seen in whatever the money was. Now, we're not going to get into all that. Where did this value come from and all that junk? But money's always been around. There's always been a way to trade, right, this for this. And even if money doesn't exist, something has to be bartered or traded in the place of. Money just makes it easier. Money makes it easier because we can take a slip of paper or a credit card or a whatever and go do whatever. So as we think through today, I want you to think of really how you've maybe grown up with money, maybe how you've grown up, maybe the way that your family's taught you about money, maybe how you have seen money in your life through most of your life because of maybe how much money or how little money that your family's had. So I just make sure everybody knows who I am, because I know that we've sent this out to our whole list. There's a big old list of people that see these videos. My name's Cory Long. I've spent about 9 years now in the internet marketing space online. We own a dozen or so businesses that we have that are way more than just internet marketing now. We do all kinds of other stuff. But we spent 17 years in full-time ministry before that. And so I spent time in youth ministry, college ministry. We spent time working in children's homes. I ran a children's home. We've done all kinds of things through the years that was full-time ministry. I spent really the first 20, I don't even know, probably the first 17 to 20 years of our marriage, we were pretty broke. We were in full-time ministry. We didn't have a whole lot of assets. We didn't own much. The bank owned everything. Credit card debt, like it was the full, kind of the typical living paycheck to paycheck kind of lifestyle for us. 9 years ago, when we started what we are doing now, a couple of years in, that shifted pretty quick. And since then, we've been able to build more and more businesses, more assets, and started to increase everything else that we do, from our giving to the way we're able to bless others, to the way we spend time serving. We spent the last 4.5 years or so on the road in an RV, just going from camp to church to other types of ministries, and just serving wherever we could, whenever we could, however we could. And so it was a huge blessing to be able to just travel and serve people. That took years for me to get our businesses in a place to where we could go do that, and the businesses survive and thrive. And we have a lot of people that follow me because they want to be able to go do that same kind of thing. Well, today, if we get what we're talking about correct, if we start to move towards what Jesus tells us to do, it's a win, 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 win. Everybody wins. And I think that's going to become pretty clear as we talk through the scripture that we're going to get into. So we're going to look at Luke 16. We're going to look at the parable of the shrewd manager. As we go through this, today's going to be a little different, because what I want to do is I want to read the whole thing, and then we're going to go back and kind of go through it piece by piece. And I think I want to do it that way, just because I want you to get the full story. Let me get my screen share on here. All right. You guys should see how this one calls it something different. Dishonest manager. You'll see shrewd, dishonest, unfaithful. I don't know. There's all kinds of different words and terminology that different versions use for this same exact story. And I will tell you, this is one of those stories that if you look at from an ESV to an NIV to an NASB to a Message to a whatever, if you start going through the versions, you're going to see that some of them even really change the meaning of the story based on how the person viewed it when they interpreted what the words meant. And again, I want to put a big old disclaimer up front. Look, guys, like, as I'm reading through this, I'm looking at it a certain way. Maybe it's right, maybe it's not. I think we can all agree on, at the end, I think we're going to agree on where Jesus was trying to move the disciples, what his purpose was for the parable. But there's some things that are in it that can kind of be seen a different way depending on what your interpretation is of why he said what he said. And so as we go through this, I want to make sure that I just say that up front. I always like, and Scott that's on here, he has literally created a Barnabas ministry that's kind of this same idea. Iron sharpens iron, right? We need people in our lives that are going to push us and question, and that we can have good conversation with. And I think this is one of those verses that we could set for hours probably and talk about all the nuances of this story, of this parable. But I think today, with the amount of time that we have, we're going to move through this and then try to get some good practical application out of it from what Jesus specifically says. All right, so I'm going to read down through the whole thing through verse 13, and then we'll go back and we're going to read down through 15. Yeah, we'll read down through 15. All right. So right here at the very beginning, he also said hang on, before I read this real quick. Luke loves to put together parables all in the same kind of thing, right? Luke 15 is all about the lost, parable of lost sheep, parable of lost son, parable, right? Lost coin. He likes to put together parables. So I would highly suggest, after we do this today, take a little bit of time and read through the rest of the verses, like the other parable that's down below this, which is, you guys are going to be very familiar with it, right? It's the story of the rich man and Lazarus. And if you'll read through this parable and then you'll skip down and kind of look at the rich man and Lazarus, this will make a whole lot more sense. He's talking about money and possessions all through 16. Luke is talking about money and possession all through 16. So he's trying to get a message across. Now, in the end of 15, we see the conversations happening with the Pharisees. Immediately in 16, we see he also said to the disciples right off the bat. But we know, based on down further inside the parable, we know that the Pharisees were still listening. They were still paying attention. That's who he was speaking to in this. And if we don't know that going into the story, yes, he's talking to the disciples. Yes, he's trying to teach them a lesson. He also knows the Pharisees are listening. And the Pharisees were businessmen of this time. They were the ones that owned the crops and the fields, and they were the ones that owned the vineyards, and they were the ones that did all those things. And you'll see later that these same Pharisees are the ones that are going to get a little upset with Jesus in the way he actually presents this message. So, which is pretty common. He liked to use parables to teach, right? He used these stories to teach. So he also said to the disciples, there was a rich man who had a manager. Charges were brought to him that this man was wasting his possessions. He called him in and said to him, what is this that I hear about you? Turn in the account of your management, for you can no longer be manager. The manager said to himself, what shall I do? Since my master is taking the management away from me, I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I've decided what to do, so that when I am removed from management, people may receive me into their houses. So, summoning his master's debtors one by one, he said to the first, how much do you owe my master? He said, 100 measures of oil. He said to him, take your bill, sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to another, and how much do you owe? He said, 100 measures of wheat. He said to him, take your bill and write 80. The master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness, for the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of your unrighteous wealth, so that when it fails, they may receive you into the eternal dwellings. One who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much. And one who is dishonest in very little is also dishonest in much. If then you have not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, who will entrust you to the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. The Pharisees, who were lovers of money, heard all of these things, and they ridiculed him. And he said to them, you are those who justify yourselves before men, but God knows your hearts. And for what is exalted among men is an abomination in the sight of God. So you kind of see the full story there, right? We've got this, Jesus is telling his disciples, but we also know the Pharisees are listening. We know that this is for the benefit of all of the ones that are listening. And we also know that he's trying to get some messages across. Now, usually with a parable, there's one main lesson, right? There's one main thing that he's trying to get across. So I feel like he's trying to get a couple of things across with the story that he's telling. And we're going to kind of walk through that and talk through that. Because if you look at the overall story, and you look at the overall messaging behind what Jesus says, all through the book of Luke and on into Acts, right? We know that there's some high value topics. There's some things that are overarching that Jesus is always trying to get across to his disciples. And if you think about his disciples, like these are people that, for the most part, many of them were businessmen. Many of them had money or some kind of wealth. We don't think about them that way, but they really did. We also know that women traveled along with Jesus, that actually, it says later on that they actually were wealthy women that supported the ministry of Jesus while the disciples traveled. And so we know there's a lot of that that's already there. Paul, we know, had some money. We know Barnabas was a wealthy dude. We know all these different people that had wealth, right? So we sometimes will pull out one thought or one thing, but if you see the overarching, I think some of the things that we're going to talk about in these verses today, I think are some of those overarching values that God wants us to have with our money and our possessions. So let's talk about this real quick. We know that the Pharisees are businessmen. We know that this is the group that's listening. We know that they aren't very happy with him later on. Because these guys really viewed money as righteousness. They equated, if I'm righteous, then I'm going to have money. Like there was this thing that kind of this flavor that kind of went through their lives. And Jesus was trying to point out some things, that money's not the end all, right? It's not this value that they're placing on it. And so as we go through this, hopefully you kind of see you'll see why the Pharisees feel the tension and the rub. All right, let's just go down verse by verse, and we're just going to kind of talk through this. He also said to his disciples, there was a rich man who had a manager, and the charges were brought to him that this man was wasting his possessions. Okay, first of all, I want to make sure that we realize a lot of these parables, usually God is the master or the rich guy or the whatever. That is not this parable at all. Totally not. And I think that's what confused me a long time about this parable is usually when you read one, we think of God being in this parable as the rich man or as the whatever. That is not the way this one works. There was really just a rich guy, right? There's a rich guy that had a manager. Charges were brought against him that he was wasting his possessions. So let's think about this for just a minute. What would that look like in today's time? That would be somebody that's managing somebody else's assets, a servant, right? An employee that maybe he's living a lavish lifestyle, maybe taking lavish lunches. Maybe he's buying jewelry for his wife on the master's dime, right? Maybe he's exploiting that to get a country home or doing travel, or maybe he's doing lavish trips or whatever. He's literally had these charges brought against him that he's been unfaithful to his master, right? So he has been unfaithful. He has exploited the relationship, and he has wasted the possessions. And different versions say different things, but he didn't view his role as taking care of the master's stuff, his possessions. He didn't view that as a sacred thing. He viewed it as something that was that he could get his own gain out of, right? This is about what can I get out of this? What can I get out of this relationship? And so it became more about what can I get than about what he was doing for the master, right? Something else to kind of think about with this is as you kind of think through this storyline, this was a guy that could have been paid by commission. If he took care of the master's possessions, it could have been that he got a piece of everything. That was pretty common in that time. You also need to think about the fact that Jews weren't allowed to charge interest. That was something that was a no-no. And so as we think down through this, there's some different ideas about the way this servant or this manager went about doing what he did, right? He called to him and said to him, what is this that I hear about you? Turn in the account of your management, for you can no longer be manager. So right off the bat, apparently whoever brought the charges was somebody that the rich man respected, that he felt like were legitimate. And he calls the manager in and says, hey, you need to basically get your books in order. You need to close out the accounts. In our day and time, hey, you need to get the QuickBooks stuff together, make sure that I have everything so that I can see what's going on, right? You need to close out all the books, get it all together and give it to me so I can see what's going on, right? Same kind of idea. You're no longer going to be the manager. So he has this period of time where he still has control. He still has to get the rest of the affairs in order and then hand over, right, the books and everything that's going on. The manager said to himself, what shall I do since my master is taking my management away from me? I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I have decided what to do so that when I am removed from management, people may receive me in their houses. So basically he hatches this plan. Hey, I right now am not strong enough to dig. That's not my world. I'm not going to be able to go be a laborer. So that's out. Not going to go beg. So that's out. But here's what I'm going to do. I have decided, since I'm going to be removed, that I'm going to go try to build some good rapport with other people, right? So that maybe they will let me come and stay in their home and support me or welcome me in, right? So summoning his master's debtors one by one, and just remember, he's hatched this whole little plan that's really kind of a scam, right? And he's pulling somebody else into this. So it'd be like me going to Scott and hatching some kind of plan and pulling Scott as my friend into this and saying, hey, this isn't my possessions, but let's figure something out, right? I'm going to help you scratch your back to scratch my back, right? It'd be that same kind of idea. So he's pulling them into his scam, his little way of figuring this thing out, right? So summoning his master's debtors one by one, he said to the first, how much do you owe my master? He said, 100 measures of oil. He said to him, take your bill, sit down quickly and write 50. Now, why didn't he just change it? Why did he ask the other guy to change it? And guys, look, this is 900 gallons of oil. This isn't just a little debt. I mean, you think about it. They literally had to pull the olives off. They had to press them by hand, right? This is not a process like today where you would go out and a tree shakes it off or whatever it does, and there's all electronic equipment that does everything, right? This is hand, everything by hand. How long would it take for him to do this? This was not a small debt. These are huge debts. The oil and the wheat that we're going to see in a minute. These are not small debts. He has the other guy change it. He does not change it. He has the other guy change it. Now, there are different thoughts on this. You can read commentaries about this. Some people think that maybe he was giving up his commission part of what was his out of what he was doing with these, as the manager of this master's possessions. I don't know. Maybe he's just giving away his master's money. I don't know. Whatever he's doing, it's dishonest. Whatever he's doing, it's not quite right. When he's having the other dude literally write in, oh, no, not 900 anymore, or not 100. How does it put it here? It's not 100 measures, which would be 900 gallons. It's only going to be 50 measures. He literally cuts it in half, right? And then he said to another, and how much do you owe? He said 100 measures of wheat. And he said to him, take your bill. He didn't write it. Take your bill and write 80. Let me scratch your back. You scratch mine, right? We're gonna do this together, right? We're gonna be in this together. So he has the other guy write it in there, right? He pulls them into his little plan, and he pulls them in to do it themselves. Now, I'm pretty sure that probably there's no one on this call that would actually hire this guy. I would hope you wouldn't anyway. So this isn't the kind of guy that we go hire, right? This guy's dishonest. This guy is pulling his friends into his scams. Like, this guy is doing all kinds of craziness, right? He's being unfaithful to his master. We know he's already squandered the master's possessions and all that. And he's got this whole little kind of plan scheme kind of thing going on here to get it. And what's crazy is the story just gets worse as it goes, right? He's already proven that he's been dishonest, and he's already proven that he squandered possessions, and now he's trying to use the master's possessions again to get what he wants. He's still not looking out for the master. He's only looking out for himself, right? All right. The master this is where it gets tricky. This is where there's all kinds of different thoughts on this. Verse 8, the master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness. Now, there are all kinds of thoughts on this. I've heard everything because I watched a lot of commentary. I was very curious to see what different people thought. The word that's actually used here for master can be used different ways. I'm going to take this at face value. I'm going to take it that it's the master, the rich man, commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness. Now, why would he do that? Let's read the rest of the verse. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. You ever heard the phrase, it takes one to know one? That's kind of what I feel like is going on here. As I read through this, as a businessman, knowing what's going on here, it kind of feels like the master looks at the guy, because guess what? They're both sons of this world. It does not say that the master is a son of light. It actually says the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with each other, their own generation, right, than the sons of light. And so if we take it that away, and we take it that the master literally is looking at him going, it takes one to know one, and he's going, oh, that was pretty smart what he did right there. I could see that. That makes sense to me. And if you think about, remember who we're talking to here. The disciples, they were probably listening to this story, and they probably had an idea of where Jesus was going with this whole thing, right? But if you think about these Pharisees that are over here listening, that are businessmen, that are all about money, and that are all about making decisions to make more money, and they're probably pretty shrewd in their dealings, and are probably somewhat pushing the limits sometimes of what's right and what's wrong. He wanted them to hear all of this. My guess would be that they would probably think the same way this master does. It would not surprise me at all if they didn't look at this and go, yeah, I'd probably commend that guy too. I don't know. Kind of get that feeling when they start jeering at him later. All right. Again, all kinds of different interpretations, all kinds of different thoughts with this. That's where I'm going to land after doing a bunch of study. I would highly suggest you go study it yourself. In the end, I don't know that it makes a difference, because as we get further into this, we're going to see kind of what Jesus really wants to get the message across. So master praises him. Again, think about this whole takes one to know one, right? I think that's what's happening here. But look at the way he ends this, or wraps this up in verse 9. And I tell you, make friends for yourself by means of unrighteous wealth, so that when it fails, they may receive you into the eternal dwellings. All right. So let's talk about a couple things here. One thing is, we see that Jesus gives some very specific wording to money or wealth. One, he says it's unrighteous, and he says it's going to fail. Because at some point, guess what, guys? Like, we're all going to die. Money goes away. It's not going to help us in the afterlife. Like, it's gone. It's done. Right? We can't take it with us. Right? We all heard all of those things. A rich guy and a poor guy is all buried in the ground. Same way. Casket may look different, but it doesn't matter. Right? And so when you look at what he's saying here, he gives some very descriptive words of money. Now, he's trying to give a real world example. And I don't know if y'all have ever thought about this, but there's a lot of parables that are business related. A bunch. There's a bunch of parables that he does that are all career, work, business related, because it's stuff that people could get a hold of. It's a story they could understand. It's a story that they could actually capture and go, oh yeah, I get it. I understand it. Right? And so we see him say, and I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous wealth, so that when it fails, they may receive you into eternal dwellings. So what is he talking about here? And man, this is very interesting to me, because it's kind of interesting. He's literally saying, go make friends with that wealth that you have. And this is exactly what Scott and Dina are trying to do. This is exactly what the McClellans are doing in their ministry down in Mexico. This is exactly what others are doing in their ministry that we know personally, that are part of the groups that I'm in. They're taking their wealth, they're taking their possessions, they're taking their assets, and they're literally using it for the best thing that they could ever use it for in this world, which is evangelism. They're going to spread the gospel. They're using it to literally get others to know Jesus, to share the gospel message. And he's basically saying here, look, when you die and you go to heaven, I want you to use that wealth to get other people to heaven, to introduce other people to Jesus, so that they can welcome you into eternal dwellings. And it makes a whole lot more sense when we read down below and he starts talking about what true riches really are. What true riches really are. And so he tells us straight up. He's like, look, wealth kind of has this thing about it. And we know this. This is why we have this is why sometimes we have tension with money, right? We have this tension because we see people use money poorly. We see it create evil in the world, and we see it do all kinds of things, right? It's not the money, it's the people, right? Money's just a thing. It's just an object. It's just a tool. That's all it is. It's just a tool, right? I can use a hammer to nail a nail into the wood, or I can use a hammer to kill somebody, right? The hammer's irrelevant. It's just a hammer, right? It's just a hammer. Same way with money, just a tool. It doesn't do anything without us taking action or doing something with it. And so as we think about what he's telling us to do, he's literally telling us to take the best thing we can do with unrighteous wealth. He's trying to make a point here that money is not the most important thing. It's just not. Our possessions are not the most important thing. And remember who he's talking to, right? Remember who he's talking to. And he's trying to make that point to them. He's trying to get them to understand the best thing you can do with your wealth is to go spread the gospel with it. Go take care of the poor. Go take care of the widows. Go take care of the orphans, right? Go be a blessing. Go take your wealth and do something that's going to forward the kingdom. Go take your wealth and go evangelize. Go share the gospel with somebody. Go bring them in so that when wealth goes away, because it will, we all are going to die, right? So when it goes away, we are welcomed into eternal dwellings by those that we brought to Christ through using our possessions, our wealth. Whole different way of us looking at things, right? It's very interesting. So we're watching all of this happen. Everybody else is watching this happen. And he goes into this whole faithful, unfaithful thing. All right. So I want to, again, remember, the manager was not faithful to his master. He just wasn't. He wasn't faithful with the possessions. He wasn't faithful in the end. He just wasted. He wasted things. He did whatever he did. He used it for his own gain, his own benefit. Nowhere in here does he tell the disciples to be shrewd. I want to get that very clear. I don't see that. I do not see him anywhere in here saying, disciples, go be shrewd with your money. I don't see that. That's just what I see. What I see him doing is, disciples, go be sacrificial. I want you to go use your wealth to create relationships. Because guess what? Even the sons of man, right? He up here, right? Even the sons of this world are shrewd in their dealings. Even they will use wealth to create a benefit for themselves. We should go use wealth to create a benefit for our master, right? For our God. We should go evangelize. We should go preach the gospel. We should use it to spread the gospel around the world, right? We should go help the poor, right? All right. Then he gets into all of these other great things, and these are great things. One who is faithful in very little is also faithful in much. One who is dishonest in very little is also dishonest in much. Now, these are verses that we've talked about a lot. You probably have never heard a sermon. I've never heard a sermon in my life on verses 1 through 9, ever. Now, I've heard these, right? These have been taught, but I've never heard verses 1 through 9 because it can all be a little hard to muddle through. And again, what I told you is just my take. Go study it. I'm just one dude, right? But if we look at this whole faithful in little, faithful in much, dishonest in little, dishonest in much, goes right along with the manager, right? He wasn't honest with what he had for the master. And if we go on down below it, it talks about if you're not honest with somebody else's stuff, what makes you think you're going to get your own stuff? Right? Again, this whole dishonesty, unfaithful thing. Now, we talk about, and I say this all the time, inside of our group, money magnifies. Money magnifies who you are. I've seen people that have started to get a lot of money and they become greedy and they become jealous and they become spiteful and they become mean and they become, my guess is probably everybody on this call knows somebody that's got a lot of money that is a very lonely, very hurting, very hurtful person. But we probably also know people that have money that are giving, happy, joyful, honest, loving people, right? It magnifies who we are. And if we can't take care of little, I mean, Jesus basically sits here and says, this is almost like it's almost like a way for us to tell, right? Money gives us that ability to tell, are we able, are we capable, are we skilled enough to be able to take care of more? It's like a barometer, right? It tells us whether we can actually do that or not. If we can't take care of a little, if you're not, whether you have $1,000 in your bank account, which, by the way, in the United States right now, I think it's something like, I think I read a stat the other day, it was something like 60% of the people in the United States don't have $1,000 in their bank account. They don't have $1,000 to their name. 60%. Craziness to me, right? I would have been that guy 9 years ago. Didn't have $1,000 to my name. Now, if we're not faithful for a little, right, we're not going to be faithful with much. And it's this barometer that says, if we're going to be dishonest with very little, if we're not going to be honest about what we have, and we've seen dishonesty in Scripture, right? Ananias and Sapphira, right? That's a pretty easy dishonest one. They had wealth, they had money, they went and sold a piece of property, and instead of giving it all like they said they were going to do, they didn't. They got caught. And they were killed. Right? And so we see dishonesty. I mean, it's pretty clear in Scripture where there's dishonesty that's happened, where there's quick judgment. There's quick judgment. And so this whole idea of faithfulness and dishonesty and honesty, right? So we've got to make sure that we're being faithful with a little. All right. Then let's go to 11. This is so much meat in all this. If then you have not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, again, he uses unrighteous. Remember, he used unrighteous wealth up here too. Unrighteous wealth. And if you have not been faithful in unrighteous wealth, who will trust you with the true riches? So what are the true riches? I don't think he's talking about money. I really don't. I think he's talking about souls. I think he's talking about people that have been put into your care. I think he's talking about those youth kids that I took care of at children's homes and their families. I think he's talking about the college students that we have right now that we're trying to minister to and we're blessing and bringing into our home and feeding and taking care of and trying to give them a home away from home while they're not, at their home, they're at college. Many of you have those people in your lives that have been given to you as someone to take care of, those souls. To me, those are the true riches. Again, if we go back up here and we say, when he says that about using wealth so that when it fails, they may receive you into eternal dwellings. I think that's what he's talking about here. I think he's talking about, man, if you can't be faithful with unrighteous wealth, if you can't do a good job with your resources that I give you, those possessions that I give you, the wealth, the money, the stuff, then how can I trust you with people's souls? How can I trust you with people's hearts and to teach Scripture and to evangelize and to, right? I think that's what he's talking about here. And if you've not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? Again, why would anybody give this manager anything if he can't take care of the master's stuff? Same way with us, right? Same way with us. And we're going to kind of get into that here in a minute. I don't know about you guys, but I want my possessions to build the kingdom. I want my wealth to build the kingdom. I wanted my business to build the kingdom. I want my time spent on this earth to build the kingdom. I want my family, the investments that I've made in my kiddo, right? I want to teach her to be the same way. I want her to invest in the kingdom. She is teaching a bunch of goofy little middle school girls right now volleyball. She's got 60-something middle school girls. And she's choosing to do this after she works a night shift and runs a night shift for CT at a hospital. Then she's going during the day and doing practices and doing games and tournaments. I'm like, are you sure you can handle all that? And she's like, I really want to do this, Dad. I'm like, do it. She's speaking into these young ladies' lives in a way that probably most of them have never had. And I'm like, you go, girl. Like, how can we support this? Right? And so I want that generation. I want my daughter to do the same thing. I want us to be able to speak into the world through the things that we have. And let's just be honest. The more resources I have, guess what? The bigger impact I can make. And the more resources that we've gained, the more cool stuff we've been able to do. It's been amazing to watch how that ripple effect has happened. Not only that, the culture that we've built inside of the groups that I'm a part of are all wired the same. We have people in there that are wired the same way. They want to go do the same thing. So now we've multiplied everything that we're doing. Whoever's faithful with little is going to be faithful with much, right? Whoever can be entrusted with unrighteous wealth, right? I'm gonna give them true riches. And I think that's people. I think that's souls. I think that's places where you evangelize. Maybe it's in your own neighborhood. Maybe it's in your backyard. Maybe it's at your church. Maybe it's at your workplace. Maybe it's at the gym that you go to. Maybe it's in the mission field because that's where you're at. I don't know. I don't know what it is for you. Maybe it's something that you've had on your heart that God put in a call, man, that you're supposed to build this thing, do this thing, go this place, whatever. Talking to a guy yesterday that they're putting together a nonprofit. He's inside of our group. They're putting together a nonprofit from his business. He's using the resources to build a nonprofit in Pakistan for kids in the streets because they have all these orphan kids in the streets. That's what we're talking about, to me. That's true riches. All this other stuff, it's going to go away. He already said it. It's going to fail. It's going to go away, right? That's the true riches. It's not going to last. And in some measure, it's got to be unrighteous. He tells us that multiple times. And how are we going to ever get our own, right, if we can't take care of another's? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. Now, what I love about this is there's different terminology, by the way, that's even used in this verse. Some versions use slave instead of servant. That's very different terminology in the day and time that we're talking to. I want to make sure that we understand what that might look like. Some of you have probably had multiple bosses. I know I have. If you've worked in church work, you've had multiple bosses. More than likely. And many times, they didn't necessarily agree on the direction that things needed to go. One's pulling this lever and one's pushing this lever. And at some point, you got to choose which one of those that you're going to go along with. Because you're going to get pulled in all directions. And that's what he's saying here. Somebody that's going to chase the money, which he knew the Pharisees, that's the people group he's talking to here. He knew the Pharisees, that's the most important thing for them. That's where they put their righteousness. Remember, that's why he's using the word unrighteous wealth. That's where they put their righteousness was in money. They equated that with money. And if I equate that with money, think about the rich young ruler. One of the reasons why the disciples had a hard time with what Jesus said to them and him leaving was that they equated money, possessions, power with God's provision, his hand, his righteousness, that he had blessed him with that. And he did, right? It wasn't that he didn't. It's just that the rich man had elevated all of that above the commandments that Jesus didn't mention. When he asked him, have you obeyed these commands? Right? It was an idol for him. He had elevated money to where it became the master. It became the master. There's been moments in our business where we've had opportunities to make a lot of money with what I'm going to refer to right now as unrighteous clients. That's going to sound a little weird, probably for some of you. What I mean by that is the client's businesses, the client's values, the client's virtues, the way they ran their business and what their business was about did not line up with what I believed. We had one client that we could have done at least $500,000 to $1 million a year like that. They called me and they said, hey, we want you to come speak. You're going to be in front of all of our people. You're going to have the opportunity to literally say, I'm the guy. You can charge what you want. And we'd already had social proof that we knew what we were doing. We already had everything lined up to where they would just come We could have literally, I could have went to the event, spoke. I'd have been the only marketing company allowed. Spoke at the event and captured at least $500,000 to $1 million a year in new revenue. I turned to our staff and I said, what do you guys think? I said, I know where I stand. And they said, we don't line up with these guys. And I said, I don't think so either. So I let them know. I said, man, we really appreciate it, but as of right now, I just can't in good faith do y'all's marketing because of these things. They didn't appreciate it very much, but I wasn't going to go do business that way. Am I going to serve God and the values and the morals and the direction that he is driving me? Or am I going to go serve my own needs like this guy did? Right? If I'd have been the shrewd manager, what would I have done? Oh yeah, I'll be there. Right? I'll go take that $500,000 to $1 million a year in revenue. Right? And we had to make this was a time, by the way, in our business when we could have used that revenue. It was a time when we had lost another big account. Things were tough. And it would have been really easy to go, the money's more important than the values. And we had to make a hard decision. And we said, nope, we're not going to do that. You're going to find that if you guys start businesses, you're going to find opportunities like that where you're going to have to make a decision. Do I go after the money, or do I make sure that I line up with the values? You will. It's going to happen. And we either will hate the one and love the other one, or we'll despise the one. And right, it's this weird devotion that we have. And when we have a devotion to money, it shifts everything, right? Remember again who he's talking to here. So we see in 14, this is when they finally start speaking up. The Pharisees, who were lovers of money, right? It's a heart problem. It's a heart problem. The root of all evil is not money. It's the love of money. It's a heart problem. Guys, money is a heart problem. If you're having difficulty with money, I would take a very hard look at the heart. I would go internal and go, what is inside of me, right? There's something that's happening. These guys were lovers of money. What does that mean right here? Right? They were serving money. They weren't serving God. They heard all these things and they ridiculed him. And he said to them, you are those who justify yourselves before men, but God knows your hearts. For what is exalted among men is an abomination in the sight of God. Flip-flops the whole thing. Right? Flip-flops the whole thing and says, look, it's not about the money, guys. It's not about the possessions. It's not about all that stuff. That's not righteousness. That's not, you're lovers of money. You're going after the wrong thing. Jesus contrasts, right, that money in and of itself, even though we have to have it, isn't of itself, like, it's not a very important thing compared to the true riches. What he was talking about earlier. The people that are going to welcome us into eternal dwellings. That's more important. I want y'all to think about how many times did Jesus send out his disciples without any provisions? Over and over and over. No provisions. Right? I want you to think about, not only did he send them out, but he sent out the 70 without any provision. It was a pretty common thing for Jesus just to send people without provisions, for them to have to go out and figure it out, to go out into a community, to love on people, to figure it out. Paul's whole ministry was figuring it out, doing tent making. He even got donations. He took care of a whole community, not just himself. Some people say that Paul could have potentially been making $500,000 to $1 million a year just tent making. And I know that sounds crazy in today's money. I don't know if that's right or not. I know he was taking care of a whole community, though. It wasn't just him. He had a business that was thriving, that took care of more than just him. The steward could have either served one master or the other. He could have either served the master's needs and his wants, or he could serve himself. And he made it very clear that he was going to serve himself. And I think he's talking about something way bigger with all of this, right? So if money is going to go away and we're all going to die at some point, are we squandering our master's wealth? What are you doing with what God gave you? And I'm not just talking about money. Everybody on this call has been given unique abilities, unique skills. Everyone on this call has been given a unique calling. Michelle and I were talking about either last night or today. We know a couple that they travel all the time and they have a specific ministry that they do. And Michelle goes, man, I am so glad somebody feels called to go do that, because she said, I don't feel called to do that. And I get it. Like, I'm not either. That's not my calling. That's not what I feel called to go do. But I love the fact that they are, and they're really, really good at it. Right? So what are you doing with what you've been given? Because he tells us, are we squandering our master's wealth right now? Are we squandering what we've been given? Not just the possessions, but the skills, the time, the resources, all the things that you've been given. And when you're called to give an account, what is the account going to look like? Because at some time we'll be called to give an account of what we did with all of that, right? Are you using your resources to gain friends, to share Christ, and to build the kingdom? Because that's what we're told to do. Literally, it's what he says. Use it to build friends. Use it to gain friends so they can welcome you into eternal dwellings. Because when they get to heaven, right, they're going to welcome you in. Are we that? Are we doing that? Are we using our resources to gain friends, share Christ, and build the kingdom? I want to flip that around and ask you a question. Right now, who's going to welcome you into heaven? Are there people that you've shared Christ with, that you've used your resources, that you've built that relationship with and shared Christ? Are there people that are going to welcome you into heaven? Have you done that? Have you used your skills to do that? We're told in those verses that's what we're supposed to do, right? I don't think we're going to be called, really, honestly, as we look at these verses, I don't think we're called to be shrewd. I think we're called to be sacrificial. That's what I think we're called to do with our wealth, our possessions, our skills, our resources. I think that's what we're called to do. I think we're called to be sacrificial in what we do so that we build the kingdom. I think that's what Jesus was trying to put together here for these Pharisees that had businesses, money, wealth, possessions, servants, probably slaves. Who knows what else? I think he was trying to get the word across. And I think that's the opposite of us being shrewd. I think he was trying to show that dichotomy, right? This is what the people of the world do, and this is what they think is good. This is what people of light do, and this is what they should think is good. And we need to be faithful with a little. You always hear this, man, when I make a whole lot of money, I'm going to give a whole lot of money away. Are you? Let's be honest. Writing a $100 check is a whole lot easier than writing a $100,000 check. We can say all kinds of things, right? And guys, I'm talking to myself just as much as I'm talking to anybody else, because this is something that weighs on me really heavily as we make more and more income and we're trying to figure out, what do we do with this? How do we use this? I get asked almost daily for money. Somebody reaches out to me and says, oh, you got money. Why don't you give me some money for this or that or these or those? Or why don't you let me into your program? Why don't you do with this? Why don't you do that? Everybody knows what they need to do with my money. It's kind of interesting. All I'm worried about is what God wants me to do with the money. Like, where does he want me to put it? Where does he want me to put my possessions, my material belongings, all the things that he's blessed me with, these businesses that we have? Because in the end, I don't answer to anybody else but him. I want to make sure that I'm doing what he's called me to do. I would push back against the idea of, well, if I just had more money, I would give more. And I was probably not the greatest of that. Just confession. When we had little, we didn't give a lot. Now, we did give a lot of time and energy, and we gave of all those other things. We poured our money back into the ministries that we were involved in. I don't know how much it was. I have no idea if it was 10% or 5% or 2% or 20%, or I have no idea. Do y'all know what the average giving of Christians is in the U.S.? Anybody got any idea? 2%. 2 to 3%. 2 to 3%. That's what they give. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Now, I don't want to take away from, if you guys realize, like, who's the first person that's going to show up when a disaster happens in the U.S. right now? Pretty much guarantee it's going to be some Christian relief, disaster relief group. And we know a bunch of them. I know guys that run them. We're connected with a bunch of them. Those guys are going to want, and those are all supported by Christians, right? The churches that we've been involved in the past, when there's a need, it's been amazing to watch people inside of those churches. If you move from Luke, and we go a little forward, and we go to Acts, Luke wrote Acts, right? And we get into chapter 2, what does it say? They sold their possessions. They took care of those among them, right? They used their money to bless, right? It looked weird to the outside community. They look like aliens and foreigners, right? Because it wasn't normal. It wasn't what you'd normally do with your possessions and your money and your time and your skills and your resources. And I think that's what God's like that. Jesus is trying to get this message across to the Pharisees. I really do think he's doing that. I think he's trying to tell them, look, man, we got to turn this thing on its head. Over and over in Scripture, we're called to do all of these things to help the poor, right? Not to pursue wealth for wealth's sake. We're also told to take really good care and be really good stewards. And some of us are going to be blessed in huge ways. Great. Nothing wrong with that. That just means that you probably were really faithful with the little to be faithful with much, right? So how many times, as we talked about a minute ago, how many times has Jesus sent out his people to go out there, and whether it's his disciples, whether it was his 70, they didn't have provisions. They just went. The faith that they had to have, the faith that they built through those experiences had to have been tremendous. Had to have been tremendous. We went through those times in our lives when we had nothing, and we were just like, okay, God, like, if this bill's going to get paid or this is going to get done, it's going to be you, because I don't know where it's going to come from. And it was kind of crazy. It always got paid. I don't know how, but it always did. So as we look around and we ask basically ask ourselves that question, how are we doing? I wanted today to be a checkup from the neck up. How are we doing? Are we squandering our master's possessions? Are we squandering what God's given us? Or are we making friends, building the kingdom, using our resources to evangelize? Are we supporting? And I know the people that I'm surrounded by, the people that are in our group, I feel confident in saying that they're generous. They're loving, they're giving. I also am confident that many of us, me included, still struggle with money beliefs that I've had since I was a kid that I'm still fighting through, because they're limiting beliefs. Because the reality is there's no limit to the amount of money and resources that you could make or that you could have as a resource to do something with. There just isn't. In our business, we can create money out of thin air because of the types of business and clients that we work with. It's crazy how it works. It's kind of crazy. There's no limit. We only limit things to what we like is up here. It really is. That's the truth. And so as we look at our business, as we look at our life, as we look at our resources, and we look at our possessions, what are we using them for? We bought a bigger house than we were thinking about buying in Lubbock on purpose. When Michelle and I looked at it, we said, okay, we can do this. We can do this over here. It would limit what we can do with the college ministry and the things that we want to do with that. Or we can spend a little more and we can have the resources to be able to bring all these college students over to our house and have a backyard that they'll come hang out in and have resources for us to be able to bless them and do things with them and have events and activities and other things for the church and blah, 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 right? List keeps going. We said, let's do that. Even if in some ways we're sacrificing in other ways for ourselves personally, we can do this for this, and it's going to bless more people. And that's kind of the way we made the decision, is through that lens. And I want to continue to make decisions through that lens. And I hope we're doing a good job of it. I think we need to surround ourselves with people that can push back and go, hey, Cory, are you giving here? Are you making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing over here? Because I don't get it all right, man. I mess up all the time. We blow money on things that's totally useless. I know we do. We talk about it. So at some point, we've got to have that accountability. We got to have that accountability. All right. I went a really long time. I knew this was going to take a really long time today. This is a very deep subject. It's a whole lot of subject. And there's not even, I mean, we didn't even tap into some of what's into this today. But I wanted to really make sure that we got the gist of what Jesus was trying to say. I've only got a few minutes because I've got another meeting I got to go to in about 15 minutes or so. But I do want to if there's somebody like, I don't know if any of you guys some of you guys are in the field. Some of you guys have studied this a lot more than me. Maybe you've got some things that hit you today. So if there's something that you're like, man, this really hit me today, like, jump in, share it. Let me hear it. I would love to
share something, Cory.
Yes, ma'am.
Interestingly, I've been reading Luke for the past 2 months. I've been in the book of Luke for 2 months. And so this segment has been something I've looked at. And like you were talking about the different translations, we're very cautious about what translations we will read or even look at.
Yeah.
But one of them that I always put alongside my NASB translation is the Amplified Bible. And it often gives you expounds just enough to make you go, oh, I didn't know that historical aspect, or I didn't know that, whatever. So talking about the shrewdness in the manager, I found it really interesting in this Amplified. It says, and his master commended the unjust manager, not for his misdeeds, but because he had acted shrewdly by preparing for his future unemployment. For the sons of this age, the non-believers, are shrewder in relation to their own kind, that is, to the ways of the secular world, than are the sons of light, the believers.
Yeah.
And I just thought it stuck out to me when I first read that. It's talking about how the people of this world and the way they function are shrewder and more, I mean, unfortunately, more often than not, it's manipulative, but they make plans and they pay attention to what's coming more so than those believers that don't really see what's coming. They don't really plan for the eternal future they're facing, and they think they've got, all the time in the world, and they don't, live according to the commandments we're called to live.
Yeah. I was reading something the other day that when the Jews move into a community and they start to build businesses up, that the money that's made in those businesses will trade hands in the Jewish community about 10 to 11 times before it ever goes outside of the Jewish community. And you wonder why they have such an effect when they come in. And it's because they will partner with each other and they work with each other and they use each other's businesses and resources. And many times people if you look at scripture and you look at the Jews, as they traveled around, a lot of times they got themselves in trouble because they would start to gain authority in their communities. They would start to become people that were looked at as leaders in their community, and they would right. People would look at them and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I think some of it has to do with that. They were very good about, and they still are very good about, working with other Jews and doing that. And if we look at that day and time, you're right. Like it's just we don't necessarily think that way. We just don't. And I don't. Maybe it's cultural. I don't know. Right? Maybe it's just the way we were brought up and how we were brought up. But I love it.
Can I say something, Fred?
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Fred Ongaga. I really appreciate the teachings that I received today. I love the Lord. He's my personal savior. He saved me it's like 30 years ago. I've served the Lord almost 20-something years now.
Yeah.
It is true that, God created us and he wants us to serve him with our wealth and money, but also with a purpose and for the purpose so that God provides for us while we are living. I'm grateful to be among of the people who are listening to you, and I'll be grateful forever, and I'll make more studies. I'm in college right now. I'm doing my master's degree, and I found a lot of stuffs that I'm going to include in my writings soon. Nice. So thank you so much.
Oh, we lost him. I don't know what happened. Oh, there we are. He's back.
Yeah. Somebody was trying to call me. If you don't mind, let me just request for your prayers. I know it's out of the topic, but let me just request for your prayers. The Bible says, ask for help from other believers.
Sure.
My family.
Oh, you're muted again. We lost you. Hey, Fred, we can't hear you. I don't think he can hear us either. I don't know what happened. I'm not sure what happened. I don't even know where he went. Oh, no, he's still there. I don't know. All right. Yeah, you can't hear us at all, I don't think. That's okay. That's okay. Hopefully, yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, somebody put it. Hey, what's up, RC?
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Yeah, man.
So this has been a big topic for my wife and I lately.
Yeah.
We go to a church called Freedom Hill, and they're a unique church. You'd call them, one guy said they're Torah cost. So they learn about the Torah and teach it, but they're also like Pentecostal at the same time. Law and grace, maybe you could say spirit and truth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
hello.
Oh, he's back.
Hey, hang on, Fred. RC jumped in. We couldn't hear you a minute ago, man. Hang on just a second.
Can you hear me? I cannot hear you no more.
Oh, you can't hear us? Can you hear us, Fred? No, can't hear us now.
So we've been doing ministry in India and Pakistan, and we purchased some girls in India and got a house for them, and we've been teaching, through WhatsApp to them.
Yeah.
And then also in Pakistan doing preaching. But what God showed me over this past week kind of was a little bit shocking to me, because my grandfather, he was a country gospel singer, and he ministered his whole life, and he gave everything he had to the homeless and the mental institutions, the jails, everything. He was very poor. Okay.
Yeah.
And then my father, we grew up on food stamps. He was very, not a wealthy man. and he gave everything away to the church. So what God revealed to me, we just gave a lot of money. We're talking about money here.
Sure.
To India and Pakistan. And God smacked me upside the head. And he said, that was for your wife and your children. Because he said, your wife and your children, that is your ministry. Okay. So this is more in line with like the Elijah spirit that wants to bring the hearts of the fathers back to the children and heal the family. So God really was showing us that the family unit, that's our number one ministry that we need to sow into. Money.
It's hard for us to.
Too.
Yeah, it's hard for us to help somebody else on an airplane if we don't put the mask on ourselves first, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think we get it backwards sometimes, and we try to jump in and put the mask on everybody else before we put the mask on ourselves, and then we end up dying in the process. It's true.
Exactly.
Like, we feel selfish about it, but it's not a selfish thing.
It's not selfish.
That's what we're called to do, man. Is especially men have been given a very we've been given a very specific task to be the head of our household. Right. There was a reason why God talked to Adam when he came back into the garden and not spoke directly to Eve initially. Right. And so we're given a special task. We're given a special job. They're ours to take care of. And that's our responsibility. Yeah. Man, so I love that.
That was like really, really, really hit home that we're not always supposed to be giving outside. And this plays into, because we're a Torah believing church, we also believe in the keeping the money in the community and local. So, but it starts, the first community is the family, right? Unit.
Sure.
So you keep the money within your family first, then you start spreading it outward. It's like when they grew all their crops and vineyards, they would leave the outside edges for the poor to come and grab and receive, right? But the majority of it you keep in the family, right? And in the community. And the community is made up of families. Yes.
Yeah, it's very interesting because the more you dig into this, I mean, there's so many belief systems that we have that we don't even realize we have. Like, there are things that are deep-seated. Like, look, bottom line is like 40 to 80% of everything you do every day is your unconscious.
Yeah.
It's just on automatic.
Well, and I think
many of our money beliefs are that away. Yeah, many of our money beliefs are that away.
It stems from this like occultic, like Catholicism. It's really deeply ingrained that you give to the church entity, right? The church, we need to give all our money to the church. And we're thinking it's something outside of us, right? Like other people or other things, but really it's right here. We need to receive first for ourselves, number one, and then our wife is number one, because we're the same person. You're literally one person. So you and your wife, you receive first, then your children, and then you just keep going outward, right? And then whatever's left on the fringes, that's what you give to the poor. And then you live by example. Now the world looks at Israel, right, and looks at you who has been grafted and adopted. They see you as a light shining on the hill, and they're like, why is everybody else suffering and you doing so amazing? Well, then you get to share.
Yeah. It's interesting how we can turn poor into virtues, or a virtue, and we can turn rich into a virtue.
Right.
And neither one of them are a virtue. Right. No. And yet we create a virtue out of those things. I hear it all the time. And I said it when I was doing ministry work, man, I'm just a poor youth minister. And I kind of wore it as a badge of honor. That's not right either.
No.
So
No.
All right. I have a meeting that I have got to run to. I really appreciate the few that were able to speak. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys being here on a Tuesday afternoon. I know you're giving up your time and energy to come and do this, and your resources and all of those things that we just talked about. And I appreciate that. I hope today that we can at the very least go, hey, this is where we're heading. And this is what we need to do with our time and our resources, even if it's just the idea of, hey, let's just make sure that we're using our resources in a way that's going to bless the kingdom, build the kingdom, do those things, because we see that when those things all align, it's a win. And I think that's where sometimes we get off. We don't, we view one thing as selfish or another thing is selfish or not selfish. Anyway, we get off the beaten path. And I want to make sure that we stay on that beaten path. So guys, I've got to run to another appointment. I appreciate it. I want to keep this dialogue going. If you guys are not in our digital business with a mission free group, you're welcome to join that. It's on Facebook. We would love to have you in there to keep that dialogue. I know many of you are already in my programs. Drop in and drop a nugget into the group from what you learned today or what you have been learning. Sounds like Julie's been studying Luke for weeks now. And so who knows what she's pulled out of all of this. It's great. I love hearing it because I want to get pushed. I want iron sharpens iron. I want to make sure that my beliefs and where I'm moving is in alignment with what God says. And so, man, be blessed today. Go bless somebody today. Use your resources for evangelism and good and blessing others and doing the things that we're supposed to be called to do. And let's make sure that we are being good stewards of our master's resources because they're all his. They all belong to him. You guys have a great one. Be blessed. I'll see you guys next time.